Emma.
Thank you, Chloe. We could easily dedicate a whole session to online safety, and Chloe's just covered the basics. And like she said, those two sites that are on the screen now really are the best two to keep up to date with everything. We're going to move on a little bit now to grooming and exploitation. And we know that grooming is something that happens when someone takes advantage of another person by persuading them to think and do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So there's a tough subject coming up now, but it is an important one. We're going to talk about pornography and our young people for a minute. So if you do want to mute us, this subject takes about just under 10 minutes if you want to make a cup of tea and then come back if you think this will be hard for you. So research shows us that anyone on the internet can be about 6 clicks or less away from seeing inappropriate or harmful content online. Try it out. Type in something totally appropriate that your young person might search for. Just follow the links that it sends you and see where it takes you. Research commissioned by a safety group showed the strength of these algorithms and how they're used by social media companies based on a user's activity. So, for example, if you think about your Facebook or your Twitter and the kind of adverts that come up, they are targeted to you based on your previous searches. So whilst a teenage boy just Googling random stuff may be targeted with some age-appropriate material, such as college courses or sportswear, he's also likely to be targeted with highly sexual content just because he's a teenage boy. So your 14-year-old clicking on a recipe labelled healthy eating, then following the next click, might then find diet tips. Then the next link will lead them to eating disorder sites, which could totally distort their image of a healthy body and not at all what they were originally looking for. We know now that the average age for a child's first exposure to online pornography is 11, with the exposure for younger children now being as early as 5. And I know you don't want to hear this, but young people under the age of 15 account for nearly 22% of regular Pornhub users. So porn is like any other addictive drug, and it affects our young people's brains in the same way that drugs do. Deep inside our brains, there's something called a reward center. You've got one, so have your children, so actually is your dog. And the reward center's job is to release pleasure chemicals into your brain whenever you do something that feels good for you, like eating tasty food, doing a workout, or enjoying a kiss with someone. The high that you get from that chemical rush makes you want to repeat that behavior again and again. And thanks to your reward center, your brain is hardwired to motivate you to do things that will improve your health, ultimately your chance of survival. It's a great system, normally. The problem is that your brain can be tricked. When addictive substances are used, they give your brain a false signal. And since your brain can't tell the difference between, say, drugs and a real healthy reward, it goes ahead anyway and activates this reward center. So an important chemical called dopamine is released, which makes your brain start developing a craving for that reward. Fake or otherwise, your brain can't tell. As long as there's lots of this dopamine floating around, these cravings are going to keep getting stronger, and we're going to feel super motivated to keep pursuing more and more of that drug. Because essentially addictive drugs hijack our brain, turning it around and forcing it in a direction that was never meant to go. And want to guess what else makes us do that? Porn. Researchers have found that internet porn and addictive substances like tobacco have very similar effects on our brain. So what that means, and what most of us realise, is the more drugs we take, the more we need. And that's why addiction is so hard. And studies have shown that porn stimulates the same areas of the brain as these addictive drugs, making the brain release the same chemicals. So porn triggers pathways in the brain that cause cravings, leading users to go back for more and more extreme hits to get their high. Just like when we take drugs, we build up a tolerance, so we need newer and more hardcore porn for the same effects. And this is exactly what today's internet porn sites provide. An endless stream of fresh images delivered at high speed in vivid colour 24/7. Before porn users even start to get bored, they can give themselves another dopamine boost just by clicking on something different, something more stimulating, and something more hardcore than before. Porn consumption really does follow a very predictable pattern that's very similar to drug use. We obviously try and protect our children all the time from drugs. You can't buy cigarettes, alcohol, and in many shops you can't even buy paracetamol without having to prove your age. But currently, although this is going to change, we hope, only about 3% of pornographic websites require you to prove your age before viewing. And you can still lie. And a huge 45% of the sites do not even include any adult content warnings, which makes it very, very easy for your child to stumble into a pornography site by accident. In 2018, the Internet Watch Foundation removed 105,000 web pages showing sexual abuse of children. The online porn industry is suggested to be worth over £97 billion. So protecting your children is not top of this industry's priorities. Of course, your children may also deliberately search pornographic content, and they might do this for various reasons. And remember that it's perfectly normal for them at this age to be curious about bodies, about sex, and about relationships. And sometimes they might just be looking online to find answers to questions that they're too embarrassed to ask. But exposure to pornographic content harms children. Exposure to pornography at a young age leads to poor mental health, sexism, objectification, sexual violence, and many other negative outcomes. And among other risks, when children view pornography that portrays abusive and misogynistic acts, they come to view such behaviour as normal and acceptable. If your child's first kind of understanding about sex and relationships is through a porn site, they're going to come to view behaviour like that as normal and acceptable. It's really hard, isn't it, to think about how something that your child might see at age 11 may then have terrible consequences in his or her relationship 20 years from now. But that really is the reality when we're talking about pornography. And pornography has really changed in recent years. When most of us were children, the only way to access pornography was by embarrassing yourself and buying a top shelf magazine or a DVD, or embarrassing yourself even more and having to go into a sex shop. But our children don't need to do this. So in a way, we were better protected than they are now. With the best will in the world, it is really hard to protect your children from online dangers. Yes, we can look at parental controls, we can look at blocking of websites, etc. But if they really want to find something, they will. There are hundreds of sites that we can direct you to around online safety. You can just Google it, put it into YouTube, but their friend's phone or laptop may not have the same safety features, and there's not a lot you can do about stopping your children from accessing things when they're out of your reach. It's all really scary. Some of these stats are horrible on your screen now, and you might feel a bit powerless about what you can do. But we're going to go straight back to our basics. However awkward and embarrassing this might be, they need to talk to you and you need to talk to them. Because if you don't fill in the gaps, then somebody else will. I've just told you that the average age of a child viewing their first online pornography is now 11. So you can never have these conversations too early. Don't let the awkwardness build until it becomes a taboo subject. If you've managed to build that safe and open environment, then your young person might come to you with questions way earlier than you expect them to. Try not to tell them off if you do find that they've accessed porn, and try not to instantly take away their device as punishment. Try to be casual, give age-appropriate answers, but it is still okay to say that some things are only for adults and it's not okay for them to be looking at it. Also remember that what they have seen might have scared them. There's some dreadful stuff online. So you will need to be reassuring about the confusing emotions that your young person might feel after seeing some explicit content. Remind them it's okay to be curious. This really is a normal part of growing up, but also be prepared to challenge views that might arise from watching adult content. Reinforce the message that sex and bodies that they've seen in porn are not realistic. Explain that porn can make things like non-consensual sex appear normal and okay, but it's really not. We wouldn't want our children's first impression of sex to be as distorted as we know porn can be. And there's also a lot of AI porn around now, that deep fake porn. So what they're watching might not even be slightly real. It's really hard for your young people to work out what is real and what is not when they're watching things online. Start these conversations as early as you can, even using the correct words for body parts to avoid any confusion. Talk about consent so that there's no blurring of lines, and encourage them to respect their own and other people's bodies. It is really embarrassing for you. It's really embarrassing for your young person, but that embarrassment is really worth getting over.